another great day and another great episode of Younger Life Live. I'm Mary Anthony, and today I get to be with
Mike Sanders hanging out again.
Yeah, I know it. Rick, we're thinking about you, but
yes,
we had a lot of fun yesterday, and we're ready to do it again today.
Do it again.
I know.
One more time.
Today it's our Ask a Pharmacist Thursday, which I always love. You know, we do that bi-weekly, and we always get great questions, and we can always take them live, too, so you're welcome to call us at 219-861-1632 if you have any questions you want to ask us to ask the pharmacist.
It's a good time to ask those questions
too,
because people have a lot of ideas about medication.
Well, they're fleeting thoughts. They're little fleeting thoughts. You don't really think much about them, or you think, oh, next time I'm at the doctor, I'm going to say this, and it's something that might be really no big deal, but it's still there, and you can get those answers.
Well, you got an hour to rethink of those
things
right now.
I know it. And today we have Cindy with us, who we love. She was our first Ask a Pharmacist, and we toggle between her and Jeremy. They are both pharmacists at LaPorte Hospital, and they're both fabulous. And today we get Cindy, so let's see if we have her on Skype.
Let's see if we have her on. Cindy, are you there?
Here I am.
Hey!
I'm back.
Oh, I don't have my headphones on.
Hi, Cindy. We're going to put our headphones on.
Good morning. I didn't have my headphones on. I was thinking, I can't hear her.
Rick's better at cueing you about this stuff.
I know. That's funny. I still need reminded. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy I get to be back with you guys.
I know. We've missed you. It seems like it's been forever. Jeremy's been fabulous in your place, I must say. But we definitely have missed you.
It's nice to be back.
Well, good deal.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Are you ready to play Ask a Pharmacist?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
I am.
Right.
I'm always slightly nervous when we start this because you're never sure what questions you're going to get, but
you
I'm
and me
excited.
both, sister. Let me tell you. All right.
Well, thank you so much for coming back and joining us. We always get great responses from listeners after our Ask a Pharmacist shows. People they love it, and I think it just, again, reminds them that what a great chance they have to ask questions that they might have, not really think too much about, or just that comes to mind and then is gone next time they're at the doctor. Yeah. So
and we really are meant to be there as a resource and an extension. You don't always necessarily want to call the doctor's office with some of the questions, like you said. It may be something on your mind, but it may not be like critical to your health. And definitely, pharmacists are a great resource to tap into for people.
Well, good deal. I loved this one. This is so going into spring and summer. It is the season for pesky bugs. Of course they come with. We keep hearing a lot about Zika, the Zika virus. Can you tell us what Zika is and if it isn't a real threat in our own community?
We are going to hit it hard.
I
right
know.
Out of the box.
I know.
Right
I'm sorry. You know what? That was on our
Yes.
list last time. We just didn't get to it.
Can't we
Right. It
softball
came up,
her
but we didn't get to talk about it. Yep.
Yes.
And I think it's really important to kind of discuss that there are some things we really want to be concerned about, and there are some things that are a bit of the media hype.
Yeah.
So let's get down to what the truth is of everything going on with it.
Okay.
Zika is a virus, and it's spread through the bites of mosquitoes. So that's how you're going to get it. People kind of act like it's this new, horrible, zombie apocalypse virus that's coming out.
I love it.
It's really not what we're dealing with.
Okay.
The reason it's called a Zika virus is it was originally discovered in Uganda in the Zika forest. But it's been around since the 1940s. So it is actually something that's not new.
Wow.
What's new is having it show up here in the U.S. So in the 1940s, it was originally discovered. By the 1950s, it was throughout all the Pacific Islands. 2015 is when we started to see cases both in Brazil and the Caribbean islands. So that's the reason it's sort of shown up now on our radar for us, because geographically it's getting closer to us. What you need to know is, though there's been, quote, reported cases in the U.S., the Zika virus itself is not in our mosquito population. We've had, to date, 591 confirmed cases of Zika virus, and every single one of them is travel associated.
Oh, that's really good to know.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. So, like, if you're out and you're going to get bit by a mosquito, that is not going to give you the Zika virus at this point in time.
I think you just cleared
eventually
up a lot
could
of things for
over
people
time
listening.
migrate. Potentially, it can, but right now we have not found it endemic in our own mosquitoes. So that's good for us to know. It's also good to know because now it actually currently is not a problem for like pets. Some people are concerned about the pets because
Yes.
some of the viruses that can affect humans can also affect animals. So this is at least one we don't have to worry about that.
The pet question was another question that I had. I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, there's-
our animals are in and out. I mean, some people's animals stay out, but mine are in and out, and I certainly wouldn't want them to be able to get it.
Right, and you don't want them to get it. And then there's always the concern if they do, is there, animal to human transmission of
I know we're hitting a little
the
hit.
thing that makes Zika a little bit different, and the reason we're talking about it, and some of the hype came up, and I want to talk about how it's transmitted.
Okay, great.
It's transmitted by the mosquitoes, but what they have found is if someone's infected and they are actively sick from the virus, it can be sexually transmitted.
Oh,
and
wow.
at this point, it can be sexually transmitted by the male. They've done some studies, and it's called viral shedding, and that's how they tell if the virus is still left in your body. And if you do blood tests for 2 to 10 weeks after exposure to the Zika virus, even though the blood tests 2 to 10 weeks are negative, you don't see the virus showing up in the blood tests anymore. It ended up 2 to 10 weeks was still showing up in the seminal fluid.
Oh my.
So if a man has it, he could actually give it to any of his sex partners. So they're actually recommending that anyone who's traveled and has a positive Zika, if they've come back and they've gotten the test and they realize they have it, to actually have protected sex for 6 months. And part of the concern is if a pregnant woman gets it, there is now some causal links to birth defects. And it's called microcephaly, so that the head doesn't form correctly for the baby. And so they often are born stillborn, or they are born and they have the incorrect size of their heads, which is obviously just a horrific side effect, a horrific birth defect. So that what makes it a little bit different, because once someone has it, now the questions we do not have answers to, can a pregnant woman spread it to someone else, or can a woman having sex spread it to someone else? At this point in time, there's the viral shedding test that they do. It has not been found in vaginal fluids. So they feel like a woman isn't going to transmit it, but it's really new. We're doing a lot of research on it. We're not for sure.
Wow.
But it's just a good idea. Sometimes they're even recommending if couples are trying to get pregnant, and if either partner has traveled to the Caribbean or to endemic areas, that they wait for 6 months, like do the protected sex for 6 months and then try after that, just to alleviate any risk.
Wow, that's really scary. Can you when you talk about the birth defects in the baby, of course, it's horrifying to think of.
Yeah.
The babies that are not born stillborn, but are born with this birth defect, this is, I know, totally off the wall, but what is their life expectancy? Are they not going to make it, or do they?
Well, most of the time they do not make it.
Really?
And they're going to have massive, massive disabilities.
Wow. I mean, because
Yeah.
clearly,
So-
obviously, their brain would not be developed
Right, your
properly.
brain isn't going to be able to
You know.
develop. So like as they would try to grow, they just would not. It's not good.
Wow. So since this is such an old virus, though, has there been any documented cases in Uganda or any of these other places? Obviously, nowhere locally that we've really covered, but of these babies, these infants being born and have. I mean, are you even aware? I know that's a really random. I'm really sorry. That's way far out of like pharmacy
statistics on it. What I do know is that it has been around for a long time in Uganda, Africa, and those areas. And there are not a lot of reported cases.
Wow.
So just because you're pregnant and you get bitten by the mosquito, a lot of people and we can kind of talk about symptoms maybe a little bit too. A lot of people will get bitten and they will get the infection and they will be just fine and they won't even know it.
Oh,
So it is
wow.
a really
guess that makes
rare
sense.
thing for it to happen at all. It's just there has been a causal link. There are some concerns, and there's controversy and not a lot of good data. There's some concerns that some of the microcephaly might actually be from some of the chemicals that are sprayed to reduce mosquitoes. And it might not actually be the mosquito itself. So though there's some causal relationship, clinically we don't have a lot of data to say it 100% is definitely the virus causing it.
That's
So-
interesting. That's
That
really
is interesting. I wasn't aware of that. And, I've wondered all the times we hear these reports and the horrifying side effects. I think, Wow. I mean, have any of these children lived? And just my own natural curiosity. I mean, being a mom, I think that's just terrible.
Yeah.
And how long do they live? And what kind of
Yeah,
we know they're
if
going to
they
have
did,
Zika.
I would say it probably would only be limited to years, and then it would be constant care. There would,
Yeah.
they would be
Oh.
developmentally, they would
Now,
have
you may have
a
answered the
lot of issues
question
going on.
already, but if a woman has the Zika virus
Uh-huh.
and then she goes through the sickness, she doesn't have a child, and then it's let's say a year later she has a child,
Mm-hmm.
what's the chances of having the disease then, or is that or once
That
it-
is a great question. The good thing about the Zika virus, if you, I, or anyone else gets it, and we go through the illness and we recover from it, usually, if you're going to get sick, usually the onset is going to be somewhere between 3 to 7 days is usually when you're going to see the onset of symptoms if you're going to have them. And a lot of times they are mild and people will just go through it and not even realize it. What's nice is I guess you wouldn't call the Zika virus nice, but the upside is once you've been exposed, it's almost like chicken pox. Your body remembers, and then you have essentially lifelong immunity. So if you are no longer infectious and you've been exposed to the virus, you then will not pass it on if you get pregnant 2 years, 3 years on down the line. It's just active infection when you first get bitten by the mosquito and you have the virus first actively in your system in that first week to 2 weeks.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, definitely.
It's funny. Even my children, when I was discussing that we heard about another case of Zika on the news, and they actually apparently had our first Zika baby born in the United States. So they and the woman had traveled, and she was here, gave birth, and this baby had it. So my kids, it sparked a conversation about Zika, and my children even said, wow, what happens? And they're kids. They're kids. What happens if we were to get it somehow? Would we be able to have children as when we're adults? And I said, you could certainly have children, but I don't know if it would put you at a greater risk. So I said, I will make sure that we find that out.
Yes.
So bravo, good. That's
So
nice
yeah,
to
once
know.
you're exposed, and again, the pregnant woman, the concern is when she's pregnant, she can pass it on to her fetus or her baby if it's close to the term of when she's giving birth. But that's the active infection when they first get bitten and then they get exposed. And some of those symptoms are fever, rash. People have some joint pain. You can actually get conjunctivitis or redness around your eyes, and that's usually the worst of what people have.
Really?
Yeah.
Yikes. Fever,
Just
is
kinda-
this the fever is that anything severe or just like a typical?
No, just typical,
yeah,
just
viral
just
fever.
kind of
Kinda
you
like a-
just
kinda
kind
like
of
a
don't feel
flu-ish.
good.
Wow.
kind of like a light flu type thing?
Yeah,
or-
almost like flu-like symptoms.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, man, that covers about 100 things. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's really difficult. But it's comforting to know that as of right now, we currently don't have, any the mosquito population we don't need to be concerned about. I know we live in a mosquito-ridden area, and I'm
Right.
always very hesitant to have the yard sprayed because it
Right.
makes me very nervous with the kids and the dogs, and I always
Well,
think,
definitely. You can do repellents. There's actually products that have permethrin, and you can actually you can use them, and you can put clothing in the permethrin, so then it's on the clothing, and you don't actually have to put it on skin.
okay.
That's an option. And certainly like when West Nile was coming around and
Yeah.
they talked about standing water and all those precautions, those are all things we should do anyway, just to prevent the mosquitoes. And certainly in the future, we're concerned of, if it would migrate into our population. The species that can carry the Zika virus, some of those species do exist in the U.S. It's just currently ours, and it's called whether it's vector borne. It sounds very exciting, but that just means that bugs in our neighborhoods, whether they have it or not, and currently it is not vector borne, which is definitely good.
Now, we don't hear a lot about West Nile so much
Anymore.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like Zika is a little bit like West Nile in that, it hadn't been here, it was coming here, and it was, everyone running around with their hair on fire and,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, the West Nile virus. We have a few cases every year in Indiana, and most of them, again, you kind of get the viral flu-like symptoms, and unless you're very young and debilitated or very old and debilitated or people that have, a suppressed immune response. So whether that be from chemotherapy or, any of those people are more at risk. But for the most part, people might get bitten and get West Nile virus and you wouldn't know. I was going to say that there is actually no treatment for Zika virus.
Oh, okay, good.
And there's no vaccine at this
I
time.
was curious about that to know if there was.
But as I said, really, for the majority of the cases of people that get it, it's fairly mild symptoms.
Okay.
So they will do travel questions. If someone came to, let's say, to our hospital, what are we going to do about it? We have, if you are exhibiting symptoms that might be considered Zika-like, there are usually travel questions as part of the questionnaire when you're doing triage of a patient. If we had somebody where we suspected it, then we get a hold of the local and the state health departments, and they become involved. Most labs and hospitals, and ours included, do not have the capability to screen for the Zika virus in-house. So we would have to have blood drawn, and we'd have to send that to an outside lab. And so we would work with the local and the state health departments if something like that would come up.
Is that because it's so new right now?
Right, exactly, because it's so new.
So
And
it is a blood test to determine,
Yep.
to kind of determine if someone
Right.
actually does. I wasn't sure how they even tested for it, really, if it was.
Yeah, really, it's kind of looking at for antibodies. It doesn't find the virus itself. It's seeing if it can see antibodies to the virus, and that's what it screens for.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned earlier that we're still not 100% sure if it's the Zika virus or maybe the pesticides that are causing the birth defects.
Some of the birth defects,
Some of
yes.
the yeah, so that's
Right.
So because when I first heard of the Zika virus, I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's I wanted to research it, I didn't. I'm lazy, but I'm thinking like,
That's what I'm for.
see, yeah, but I'm thinking, I'm like, where did it start? You said it started in like Africa and whatever. And
Yep.
I'm thinking,
Right.
well, with all the epidemics that run through Africa, how come the birth defects from Zika is just not off the charts?
That's why I was so curious about it. That's why I was curious to know if there had been
And that's
documented, I don't know, documentation of children not just being born stillbirth, because that can happen as a side effect of many different things. And obviously,
Right.
if this virus were to affect someone serious enough and that be a real, true related to Zika pregnancy risk.
Well, that's why I'm so glad she said it.
But the actual birth defects, that's why I'm curious to know.
well, and that's why I said, there's some truth and then there's some media hype.
Yeah.
There have been cases, people have the Zika virus and they have this birth defect. So it's linked, but it's not like every woman who's ever been bitten by a mosquito with Zika virus, this happens to, who gets pregnant or would happen to be pregnant. It's much more of a concern. The other thing that I said made it slightly different is that once you get the Zika virus, males in the active stage can transmit it. And that's
Yeah.
something that's different and new. You don't see that a lot with a lot of viruses, but that happens to be the case with this one. So there are some, nuances to this and some considerations. But again, the majority of people, we haven't heard of, like you said, this just pandemic of birth defects all over the world since the 1940s. You
Right.
haven't heard anything about it at all. So I feel like, that was what a little bit of the hype.
Well, you have taken huge weights off of my shoulders, and I know people are listening right now. They are feeling so much better because I'm like, okay, this summer with the mosquitoes coming, we're all gonna be doomed, man. But it's like it's not that bad. it's bad, but it's not.
it's
that
scary.
There's a few considerations, but yes, again, we don't have to, all hide indoors and,
Yeah.
Looking out the curtains.
Well, Cindy, I'm gonna get some
The other
fresh
thing
air
I
this
was going to
year because of
mention is they did institute the national blood supply. That's always a concern for people if they would need
Yes.
blood, if they're getting surgery. Some questions have come up for us, and they are screening the national blood supply. And if anyone's given blood recently, there is a whole travel questions all associated with any of the symptoms of Zika. And if you've traveled, and they have a list of all the islands where it's been documented, if you've been to the Caribbean or if you've been to any of the endemic areas, then they're taking that and often setting that blood aside just
Yeah.
in case.
That
just
makes
to be sure.
sense. And, that protects not just us as a population, but that protects them as well. That makes perfect sense.
Yep.
Obviously this isn't brand new, but it's just a newer.
It's newer to us.
Newer
It's,
to us.
geographically,
So I
it's
think-
moved around. Took several years, but now it's kind of getting into our back door.
Yeah.
So we are all taking notice.
Well, I think it's a good time to bring up then when you said we don't need to all hide indoors. Is there anything that we can actually do to protect ourselves besides, so obviously, spraying your yards might not be the best idea. I mean, again, I don't know. I'm always so
Right.
nervous to do that, but we live near rivers, so we have a lot of
You got
mosquitoes.
mosquitoes, yeah.
And
So, I mean, using DEET is usually the best repellent to use personally. As I said, there are some products that contain what's called permethrin, and some people are concerned about, spraying even some of those chemicals and stuff on their kids.
Yeah.
Well, you could, if they had a jacket or a hat, you can actually dip the clothing item in the permethrin. There's some of it, you actually put it in the wash. You can put clothes in there.
Yeah.
And then it will actually stay in that piece of clothing for up to 10 to 14 days.
Wow.
So then you'll get the insect repellent, but it's not physically adding it to your body, but it is near your person. Certainly this citronella candles and that sort of thing if you're going to be outside. And again, like if you have a river, you can't get rid of the river.
Right.
But if you have any standing water areas, those are certainly things that you can take care of.
Now, what's the Now, I was trying to write that down. What's the name of the product that you can wash into your clothes? What is
It's
that?
the chemical that's in it's called permethrin, PERMETHRIN.
ooh, I almost got it right.
There's
I put a
different
Y in.
different concentrations
I
of
wrote
it.
it down.
I think you can get it on Amazon.
Okay.
My husband and I actually went on our honeymoon to Africa.
Oh, how awesome.
That's one of the reasons I know about it, and to protect yourself against the mosquitoes there, because they carry
Malaria.
dengue.
Everything.
And all kinds of craziness. So they had us do a camp shirt, a hat, and a pair of pants, and have us dip it in that and take it before we went. And then when we would be out in the bush, that's what we would wear, and to help prevent, the mosquitoes.
Did you notice a marked difference? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
We
He's recommending it, so I
I
think
thought it was going to be much more buggy.
Really?
And we really didn't have a problem.
it's a shield, baby.
That's interesting.
It's a
I think I
shield.
maybe got 1 or 2 mosquito bites the whole time I was there, which was,
wow.
yeah.
Well, I
But
gotta
we
try
had the
that.
mosquito netting and, you'd spray at night, around the room on the outside of the mosquito nets, and then you crawl in underneath on the bed. And so,
Well, what a cool honeymoon.
Yeah, really.
yeah,
I
it
mean,
was,
really, that's really, really cool.
we just thought, people talk about traveling and
Yeah.
sometimes your health isn't always as good by the time you retire. And it was like, let's
So
just
true.
do it.
Go
So.
now.
So
Go out there
true.
and live.
That's
Very
awesome.
cool, though, yeah.
That really is. What a cool thing. So you're very familiar with protecting yourself against the bugs anyway. So
Exactly.
I like that. Well, that's good to know. And that also brings me a little bit to the next kind of thing we always deal with as the weather's warm, although it's here year round, is Lyme's disease. So
Yeah.
I know clearly it's different.
It
Lyme's
is.
disease is something once you get it, it kind of stays with you. You always have it. Is that right?
A lot of times you can maintain the antibiotics. The nice thing about Lyme's disease is it's actually treatable. It is not a virus, it's a bacteria, and we get that from being bitten by ticks. Ticks is the vector-borne illness. It is the most common vector-borne illness in the United States, and it is now considered the 5th most reportable disease.
Really?
And 20 to 30,000 new cases come up every year.
Wow.
But if you are exposed, there's a test that they can do. They do a blood test. And usually people will be on anywhere from 2 weeks to 4 weeks of antibiotics. It depends on their symptoms and how severe they get. If it gets severe where it's affecting neurologic systems or it's affecting the heart, oftentimes those people have to be on IV antibiotics. But what you need to know is sometimes there's 2 things that happen with Lyme disease. This is similar to the Zika virus. If you've gone through a full course of antibiotics and you have recovered from it, and then they do the Lyme disease test on you, anywhere from months to years, it will show up positive. But that is because the Lyme disease test, again, is checking for antibodies to the Lyme virus.
Okay.
So if you have successfully treated it, your body's going to have built an immunity to it. And so you're going to see that for years. So that's why, a lot of people will say, well, I have Lyme disease for years. It's good. Your body has produced
I
antibodies.
see.
It's the reaction to it.
I love that. I always thought once you got it, you had it forever, which is terrifying with children.
Right.
Thinking, oh man, you don't want
Yeah.
your kid to get this and end up having these issues with this for the rest of their lives.
long
Yeah, that's
term,
very
yeah.
scary.
Now, the second thing that happens with Lyme disease is there is a lot of people can get joint pain and that sort of thing, and it's almost similar to like rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune process. So in a small subset of people, some people will have ongoing problems, which they get the Lyme disease, their immune system reacts. The bacteria can get into your synovial fluid, which is the fluid around your joints. And because of that, people will get joint swelling and problems. Sometimes the body, in trying to react to that and to fight it, will actually start an autoimmune response, and you do get almost like a rheumatoid arthritis. And some of those people can have some long, ongoing issues, which is why we tell people if they've been outdoors to do tick checks.
Yep.
If they think they've had a tick bite, if they're not sure, go ahead and go to your doctor, because they can just do the blood tests and see if you have it. If you do get a tick bite, there in 80% of the people that get bitten by a tick that have Lyme disease, there is a classic kind of rash pattern. And it is, if you think about the rings of Saturn, you'll see a mark in the middle, and it gets red. A lot of times people will think they just have some sort of cellulitis, or, they got a ingrown hair or something. They'll think of it as, insignificant. But then with the Lyme disease, a classic sign is that then on the outside of that, there's normal skin, and then there's a ring around it.
Really?
Okay.
And that is a classic rash pattern for a tick bite and Lyme disease. And 80% of the people, if they would pay attention, actually have that as an initial sign of where the tick bite was.
Okay, that was my question. So it's actually where the tick bite was. It's not just going to appear.
Right. It's wherever that bite happened.
I see.
So the bite will be the swollen up part in the middle, and then there's this ring that ends up forming around it.
I'd never heard that before.
I have heard that, but I didn't know exactly if it meant that's where the tick had.
Yeah, it's where the tick had
Clear
been.
enough information, baby.
So I definitely, that's really good to know. And again, we always do tick checks because we live out in the country and we're outside all the time.
Yeah.
And, I'm always checking our dogs too, because I've seen many times. Just the other day, I told the kids, make sure you're checking your clothes when you come in, because I went to move a towel. Actually, it was a hand towel. I went to move a towel to throw it in the dirty wash, and something fell on my arm, and I thought it was a hair. Like one of my hairs I shed like a dog anyway. So
tickles you. Yeah.
I went to brush it off my arm, and it was a tick.
Oh.
And I said, "Oh my goodness!" We had other kids over too, so we had been in and out. They had been, and I said, it either came off of one of you kids, just falling off your clothes or off of your hair, or one of the dogs, which is very possible too. So I'm always trying to check them to make sure. Our dogs are furry babies, so they do get on our furniture, and they do sleep on the foot of my bed. So I'm constantly, worried about ticks.
Yeah,
so we are tick checking, but I love to clear up some of the issues, the symptoms with that. Same thing you said, flu-like type. Aside from the rashes, this little bullseye rash kind of thing is the difference that you're going to notice. Now, is that one only in the Lyme disease positive kind of ticks then, or if you get a normal tick bite?
Oh.
Right, a normal tick bite, you won't usually see that at all.
Okay.
Like,
Well, that's good.
The area might get infected.
The Lyme disease telltale is the Saturn.
It is that pattern when it's the Lyme disease. I was going to go back and just, you kind of brought it up, but we had talked about pets before with Zika.
Yes.
Besides getting ticks on them and bringing them in, animals, dogs and cats, can actually be bitten and get Lyme disease itself. And they can test dogs just as well as they do people for the Lyme disease test. We recently actually adopted a yellow lab named Booth, a big goofy guy. And when we took him in for his initial blood test, that was one of the things they screened for. And they said, "Did you know that he has Lyme disease?" And I was like, "No." And so we did not know where he had come from. We didn't know what his history was. We knew he had been a runner for a while, that people had seen him for about 2 months out and about running as a stray before they brought him to the shelter. But we did essentially the same thing with him that you would do with humans. He got a 2-week course of antibiotics. He is clear. I just took him back for his yearly checkup, and it still is. And again, he's been treated. He's not having any symptoms, but now he's positive. And they said in dogs, the immunity usually lasts about 3 to 5 years. You'll see it show up even after they've been treated. So
it's sad.
Our pets can get it too, and they can get the same hip and joint problems, and the same thing. So, the animals can have it too. So we definitely want to be checking
I
our
do-
fur babies
I
too.
do know with our pets, as far as Lyme's goes, obviously not Zika that I'm aware of, but Lyme's they can give them a vaccination
Correct.
to help prevent it. We had a dog one time. It's been a long time ago, and it's a sad story. But he was a black lab, and only about a year and a half. And in his typical shot, in his normal yearly shots, we always just do the Lyme shot too.
Yeah.
And he began acting very funny on like a Thursday, and I noticed he wasn't eating well, and so we took him in, and he tested positive for Lyme's. But by the time it was so far in his circulatory system, the doctor said that he ended up by the next week he had to be put down. He couldn't get
Wow.
up, and it was so sad.
Wow.
I said, "Can we do anything?"
Yeah.
And they said we can hook him up to fluids, but his circulatory system was so bad. I had to carry, my husband and I had to carry him in and out to use the potty because he was so couldn't hardly stand up. But it hit him so fast, and I was so shocked by that.
And there's no way
Yeah.
to get rid of it once it takes
Well,
hold like that? Or-
apparently not for him. I mean, I do know that they do. I love pets, so I'm always looking to see what's at the shelter, just because I love to. And different rescue groups, and there are some that will say, been treated for Lyme disease, but they live and they're fine. And I
yeah.
asked the vet, I said, how in the world, with him having the shot and then him getting it and not showing any symptoms other than slowing his eating, which is the only thing I noticed, to
Yeah.
being within a week of
Yes,
dying.
it
I mean,
hits so
it was
hard so
serious.
fast. Yeah,
I couldn't
that's-
get over it. I was so shocked, and then I was so paranoid for the kids, thinking, and he had a preventative shot.
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah.
so, because they don't do. That's the question I was leading up to. They don't do preventative vaccines for people, right?
What's really interesting is when Lyme disease really hit, the media and they knew it was an issue back in the mid to late 90s, there actually was a vaccine that was developed. It was called Limerex,
Okay.
but it was only out from 1998 to 2002.
Oh.
Then the company withdrew it, citing low public demand for it. And so no company since has picked up and made a vaccine again. I know there's a lot of proponents that wish we would have one,
Yeah.
just because 20 to 30,000 cases. It's
That's
not
a lot.
necessarily rare anymore. It's
Yeah.
a good chunk of the population that if people worked or lived in wooded areas where you knew were endemic, that you might recommend for those people to get vaccinated.
And would the
No
vaccine work on a
companies
pet?
picked.
Sorry. Would the vaccine work on a pet?
That is. That they do.
There actually is one for pets.
Okay. Okay.
Right, so there is an animal version which is still available and they give to dogs. There is not a people version,
Okay. Okay.
which
Wow.
tells you how much we love our dogs.
I know, isn't that true? I'm surprised. So that's interesting to note, though, that there had been one released as far as preventative
Yeah.
vaccine, and then just
For
not
people
really
and-
good takers, I guess.
Yeah,
That's
not long
surprising.
ago, the CDC was, they were looking at a lot of vector-borne diseases. They had this big
Yeah.
compendium and had a consortium come in and talk. And there was a doctor that was rather passionate that he thought we should have the vaccine back. But so far, no drug companies have picked it
Wow.
up. That original one, I did a little more research because I was wondering, they cited low
Yeah.
profitability, and so they stopped making it. I did see that there was a couple class action lawsuits against the company.
Well, I was going to ask,
So
did
there
someone
may have
grow
been
like a
some
third
safety
arm or
concerns.
something? And
I was going to look that up myself.
I was curious to know that. Did really weird side effects happen? That brings up a really good question, though, with Zika and stuff like that. How long is a vaccine tested before it's released to the population?
That depends on what you're trying to treat and the vaccine itself.
Okay.
On average, usually and this is for a lot of drug development, a lot of times it's 5 to 10 years. It could be.
Really?
Certainly if it's a big, nationwide health concern, then the FDA can do some expedient drug approval processes to try to make that go faster. But in general, a lot of the vaccines that are already out there, most of those were studied anywhere from 5 to 10 years before they were made available to a public. And, there's just that fine line that you have to walk
Yeah.
of if it's something dangerous out there that we can just prevent, like we prevent polio now. I mean, that's just pretty much unheard of anymore to have polio, which is great. But you also are introducing something that stimulates the immune system, which we want the positive result to prevent a disease. But like I said, even with the Lyme disease, sometimes our bodies can get a little haywire and we can almost start an autoimmune response. So there's that fine line of wanting to get it to market as quickly as we can and, prevent diseases and the health, but also we have to have a measure of safety so that things can really be tested and we're sure we're not just, shooting half the population up with some vaccine and then realizing 5 to 10 years down the road that there was some other side effect that if we'd researched it more, we would have known. Yeah. And, there's always that fine line. So.
It's scary. That's scary anyways. So
yeah.
We have a couple other questions that are not related to Zika or Lyme's.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a really cute question too. Should we be concerned about letting our children swim in the lake water if they have recently gotten their ears pierced?
Ooh, we should cue the Jaws music and say, don't go in the water.
Yeah.
Actually, this is a great question. And I'm going to kind of expound on it. I think we kind of got the great outdoors going today, don't we?
I know. It's 'tis the season, the summer stuff.
It's perfect. I love it. It's perfect. The quick answer to that question is no, you should not. If they're still healing up, if they're still scabbing over, it would probably be best to let those definitely have some healing time before you get into lake water. And I recently did a triathlon. Yay!
Bravo!
But I did some research because there was going to be a lot of open water swimming. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like, what am I swimming in?
Yeah,
and what do I need to worry about? And so the CDC actually has a whole section, and it's called recreational water infections. And there's enough of it that it's a thing. So they have categories of lakes, open water, natural water bodies, pools, which oftentimes if it's poorly maintained pool, and then hot tubs. They have different areas that they worry about. But there are a lot of infections. And actually swimmer's ear, there are 6.2 million swimmer ear infections get reported to the CDC. So that is the biggest one if you're going to go jump in the water that people are worried about.
Okay, so I thought swimmer's ear was just when you had water in your ear that you just kind of heard around. Is that an infection of some kind?
Oh, swimmer's ear is actually an infection caused by Pseudomonas. Now people can get water stuck in their ears, and you kind of feel like you're walking around and you know
oh my God, I got swimmer's ear.
Okay, but yeah, there's actually an infection that's caused. It's a bacterial infection, and so it can be treated with antibiotics. But there's a lot of cases of that. The second thing that happens a lot, and it happens more often if you're swimming in open bodies of water, and end up by accident or on purpose drinking a lot of the water. If you're a backpacker and you're out and about and you see this, lovely, stream going down. Well, there's elk, there's deer, there's all sorts of things that are using the wild as their bathroom.
Right.
And so there's a lot of things in that water that you don't want to drink it. So there's about 10,000 reported cases of diarrhea that are associated with recreational water per year.
That's so right there, reason enough. Pack your own.
Bring your own
right.
water.
So don't be drinking water. If you are a backpacker, then you need to either sanitize it with the iodine tablets or you need to boil it. A lot of times people after swimming in open water will get skin rashes, and that's usually caused by larvae or parasites. That can cause that kind of rash. It usually will resolve on its own, and you can use things like Benadryl, et cetera, for the itching. And then sometimes there can be respiratory or eye infections, but ear infections are the biggest one out of all of it if you're going to go jump in a body of water. Yeah. And then if hot tubs aren't sanitized well, you can imagine having a big, hot, warm tub is just bacteria's playground. So a lot of times people will get infections in their hair follicles and that sort of thing.
Wow.
So rashes on their legs and etc. So,
wow, you know what? I love that you brought up about the ears question. If they're still, tender and healing and scabbing, that would probably be then for any scrape, scratch, bump that you have. If it's clearly not.
If they're scabbed over pretty well, and it's on the road to healing, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if it's, open, if it's weepy, almost like that crusty, where it's a fairly new scab, essentially you just have an open avenue for bacteria to go from the lake straight into your bloodstream and to, somewhere infect the body. So you definitely want to be careful, especially if, new piercings, new tattoos.
Yeah.
Yeah, if little kids have scrapes, all those things are things you'd want to think about.
Now, I saw this thing on the internet. I don't know if it's real or not, but there was a kid, I guess, who a bacteria went in his nose or something, and then caused some kind of like instant death of something, some
Oh,
sort.
goodness,
Is
that's
this
scary.
X-Files, or is there really some kind of bacteria in the water that can do this kind of thing, or do you know what I'm talking about at all?
I don't know what bacteria
I
that
haven't
would
heard
be.
it, yeah.
I definitely can research so we can follow up next time.
I've been watching much X-Files. I think.
But there are all kinds of things swimming around in the water. There are amoeba in there. There's bacteria, E. coli, Pseudomonas. As I said, there's a lot of larvae, parasites.
Yeah.
So there are all kinds of things that you could potentially get. Again, is it going to kill you instantly? Probably not.
No brain
it's-
eating instant death.
Yeah.
Microbes.
But I mean, certainly if someone has a suppressed immune system and they get exposed to something, it might cause a problem.
Yeah. So to protect ourselves, that leads me to a good question. Then, do the thing like we've talked about before, rinse off with some water out after you get out. Kind of make sure, as we always tell the kids, they still do, don't put the water in your mouth
Don't, yeah.
intentionally.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
just pretty gross.
Yeah.
And,
Sometimes it happens. Spit it right out.
Well,
Yep.
and they find that's the fun game, put it in their mouth and spit it at each other, and you're constantly saying, don't do that, please. That's really, really gross. So,
On so many levels.
so that's good. That makes sense. I
Just
know,
yell out fish poo, fish
Yeah.
poo.
That's it. I always tell them it's dirty but water. And I know that sounds funny, but that's literally what I tell them.
what it-
This
yeah.
is, we have to think of what's in here. And we have goldfish at home too, and we have a turtle. We see how nasty these tanks get.
Yeah, would you
we
drink
know.
that?
Do you know that's what you're in? And
Yeah.
just because it's diluted in all of this water does
Water,
not mean
it's
it isn't
still
there.
out there.
Now put on your floaties and get out there and have a ball.
Ew, but still, I love to be. Now, having said that, I love to go to
I
the
get
lakes
it,
and
I
be
get
in the
it,
lakes.
yeah.
But
I take
Oh,
the
yeah.
kids
there
out
are
all the
ways we
time.
can protect ourselves
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
bit. At least keep our guard up a little.
Yeah.
We had a person that was interested to know if there's a product at the pharmacy that can help remove those rough bumps that people get on their arms. Is that just a rash, or is that? I mean, I that actually was a person. So
Yeah.
I know dry skin. I know one of my kids had eczema, so I remember the bumps. I'm not sure if that's what they mean. They just said the bumps on the back of the arms. Is
There
a product
actually is, and you notice it more in the summertime just because people have tops and that sort of thing on. But there actually is a condition, and people do get, sometimes people call it chicken skin. Sometimes the bumps are little red bumps and they don't ever erupt or anything. Some of them do get more red and inflamed, but that's actually what's called keratosis pilaris. It's actually a condition. People are genetically predisposed to it. And essentially what it is really actually just your pores getting clogged, and then the body's reaction to try to deal with that is actually it kind of heals over it and hardens it. So it makes all these little rough bumps.
Wow.
Unfortunately, there's not really like any prescription kind of product or anything that you can use. It's interesting, 50 to 80% of adults will have it at some time in their life, and 50 to 80% of adolescents get it when they're going through puberty, and then 40% of adults just randomly get it. We don't 100% know why. We do know that people who have histories of allergies and asthma, they're more prone to have it than other people. But there are actually some over-the-counter products that you can look for. If you go to like the skincare aisle, and you'll probably find it in ones that talk about like exfoliation, or skin peels, sort of that sort of thing. Really just, let's go grab our loofah, people, and just get a scrubbing, because that's part of it. It's just the pores getting clogged.
Yeah, that
So
makes
if we can do
sense.
some really good exfoliation, that will help. But one of the products is beta hydroxy acid, and the other one is salicylic acid. Aspirin that we take is actually, a lot of times pharmacists will abbreviate it as ASA, and that stands for acetyl salicylic acid. What's used topically is just plain salicylic acid, but it has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties. So besides it kind of has a skin peeling effect, it also can reduce the inflammation. So those are some products you can get over the counter, and you can put on your arms, and it will kind of help the body slough off that extra skin and reduce the amount of pores that get plugged, and can kind of help that.
Very cool. Now I got a question here, because I have my own Rick Federici instant text line happening here. So
Okay.
Oh, nice.
And it says the neti pots.
Yes.
Have you heard what it? That's they were responding to the question I was asking. It says brain eating amoeba deaths in 2011. Hey,
Okay.
look, I'm not making this stuff up, man. I saw it on the internet, man.
It's on the internet. It has to be
It has to be. What is this? What is
That's
this?
so
Neti
funny.
pots, man? Come
Yeah.
on. People are afraid. I'm afraid. What's up? What's a neti pots?
So a neti pot, it looks like a little teapot, and you end up putting lukewarm or warm water, depending on the person's preference. And there's saline packets that you can get, essentially like salt, and you make a saline rinse, and you actually bend over, pour it into the side of your nose, and it will actually go up into your sinuses, and it flushes things out of your sinuses. It is an older remedy, but it is still a very popular remedy, and there aren't a lot of downsides to it. So
you could use that not just for the risk of something getting up there if you've been in the lake water, but I know a lot of people use that that have allergies. I know my husband's one. So, to help kind of keep that sinus passage clear, right, Cindy?
yeah,
So
exactly.
Okay. This is just cute. I had, so my kids and I had some nieces and nephews over the other day, and I was writing some stuff down on a calendar for work here. And so they said, what's going on? And I said, hey, if you guys could ask a pharmacist one question, tell me what it would be. So if it's okay with you, I know we only have a few minutes. I'm just going to shoot you some of these that are really cute.
Oh,
I did have
my
a couple
kid
little
questions.
ones. A couple little ones say, what's a pharmacist? And I thought that was really funny and cute. So, but a lot of them were duplicated. So then I sent out a little mass text to some of my friends and relatives and say, hey, ask your kids this question. Just so as this little group of kids, there were about 20, ended up being actually like 22 kids altogether.
Nice.
Just saying, hey, ask your kids what they would ask a pharmacist. And I thought some of them are cute. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to just shoot you one at a time and
Sure.
we'll buzz
Let's see
through
what
'em.
we got.
Okay. What's the favorite thing about your job?
Helping people.
Good
That's
deal.
an easy one.
What's your least favorite thing?
Ooh,
Dumb amoeba
I
questions.
think probably the economics of healthcare these days and people who are really sick and need medicine, and sometimes they're just so expensive, and trying to come up with viable options of people who need the medicine and getting it paid for. And that's really frustrating for me when, things are stacked against people who can't get their meds because they can't afford them.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That's a whole nother show, honestly. It's
yeah.
heartbreaking. So what happens if someone comes in to fill a prescription and you don't have that medicine?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, most places we get the drugs that are in like a drugstore, you get from a wholesaler. And most places up till about 7, 8 o'clock at night, you can place your order and it will get delivered the next day. So if it's something that's not an emergency, that they don't actually have to get started on it right that minute, then we would order it in, come in the next day and fill it for the person. Now, if it's something that's more emergent, then a lot of times we would start calling other stores to see if anybody has it. And if it was like something that's like truly a critical medication and nobody in the area had it, then we would send them to go to the ER and hopefully they could get them treated.
Okay. How many flavors do you have to mix in medicines?
Oh, yeah, that had become a new thing. And it's interesting because not just kids get flavors anymore.
Oh, how funny.
Sometimes adults, if they have to get medicines, older adults that have problems swallowing, sometimes we're making more liquid preparations for them. So we use it for a lot of people. So, how many flavors? I would say most, of the big boys out there, the big,
Yeah.
corner drugstores, they probably have like 12 to 15.
Oh.
Do you know
different
what the most popular would be? That was the next.
Oh, I definitely do. For kids, the most popular is bubble gum.
Oh,
And
okay.
adults, the
About
most
that one.
popular is cherry.
Okay. How long did you have to go to college to be a pharmacist?
6 years.
Okay. What drug do you feel the most? I laughed when they said that. I said, I think that's a pretty random question, but I don't know.
I think we have what's called the top 200, and every year there's a pharmacy reference that comes out, but they give us the top 200 drugs every year. And for several years, the top one is actually Synthroid or thyroid medicine.
Oh, wow.
And then behind that is, I think it's the statins, which we had talked about for cholesterol.
Yeah.
I think Crestor is actually the second on the list.
Wow.
And then the next ones always kind of shift a lot, but a lot of times it's Nexium and albuterol.
Okay. This is really cute and from a family friend with a kindergartner. He said, "Do you remember all the different medicines?"
Wow,
Isn't
that's a
that
lot.
cute? He's the same age as one of my sons, and I
love
thought
it.
that was so cute.
I wish I
Like,
remember.
who could? Please, they change every day. That's crazy, but very
Actually,
cute.
I think the last time the FDA comes out with a book that's called the Orange Book. So it lists all the products, prescription, over the counter, et cetera, that we could possibly have. And I think it was over 9,000 different kinds
Wow.
of prescription products.
Wow.
And there are approximately 281 drug products that are in over-the-counter medicines.
Oh my goodness.
So you've got nearly 10,000 different kinds of meds.
That is
out there.
insane.
So
I have
I
two
wish
more.
my brain was that big,
No
but it's not.
Cindy, you are awesome. I have two more. I'm going to shoot really quick.
Got a minute?
Okay.
Does it pay good? Is my nephew's question.
Yes, it does.
I said,
You're
okay.
paid for the aggravation.
Okay, well, good. And then can you give people medicine that a doctor didn't order?
If it's prescription, we can't. But if it's a product that they want an over-the-counter, we can help them recommend something over-the-counter. But if it's prescription, a doctor has to see him and write that.
Well, Cindy, you are awesome.
Super
Thank you
helpful,
so
man.
much. That
Thank
was
you.
fun and cute, little different. I like to see what the kids are thinking. So thank
That
you
was
so much
great.
for joining us. It was great to see you again. And couple
I
weeks, we'll
I
see you
respect
again.
Zika, but I no longer fear it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right.
See, she's so awesome. Thank you so much.
Love this segment. Love this segment. So next week or tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
What are we doing tomorrow?
Tomorrow we're talking about the. I think we're going to air that Dirt to Delicious that I was at, so we're going to go with that. And Rick will be back, and we'll go over that. So thanks for joining us so much,
All right, Mike Sanders.
Mary Anthony. Have a good day.